The class is now live on YouTube.
Okay, so shall I start or what shall I do?
Yes, please.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والعاقبة للتقوى واليقين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين خاتم النبيين بالقاسم محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وآله الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين لا سيما بقية الله في الذين روحي وأرواح العالمين لتراب مقدمه الفدا واللعنة الدائمة على أعدائهم أجمعين من الآن إلى قيام يوم الدين. أما بعد السلام عليكم جميعا ورحمة الله. We took a holiday because I was traveling abroad and gone to Pakistan for a Yom Fatamiya. I was reciting some majalis. I've come back. But during this time, the writer of the book, Ayatollah Sheikh Muhammad Taqi Misbahi, he passed away. In fact, he passed away a few days ago. Only 4 days ago. So today is the 5th. So he passed away on the 1st of January. Can we all recite a Surah Fatiha for Marhum Ayatollah Sheikh Muhammad Taqi Misbahi? Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah. Ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Maliki yawm الدين. إياك نعبد اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين غير المغضوب عليهم. قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد. قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد. قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد. Okay, we basically covered the first 6 lessons in the past 3 sessions. I have been trying to do 2 lessons per week or like per session. In Qom, usually they do sometimes 1 lesson a day and they go into a lot more detail, and sometimes they do, so they have obviously classes every day. Sometimes they have classes every day for half an hour, 45 minutes, so they will be able to do 1 lesson a day and they finish in 60 sessions, sometimes probably more. So we will try and do as much as we can. Now, today is the session where in last session, we said there are simple, very straightforward proofs on the existence of God. And then there are more complicated proofs on the existence of God. And amongst the complicated proofs on the existence of God, there are many, many books on them in theology, in philosophy. Amongst those proofs, he says that we're not going to go into very, very complicated, because this book is not meant for very high level or advanced level. This is meant for 2nd year or 3rd year students in Hausa of Qom. So in the 1st year, usually they do the languages. 2nd year, they start the studies, and 3rd year, they would do some basic studies like logic, some basic aqaid, fiqh, ahkam, and then they would do this book. So it's basically literally the 2nd year bachelor's course before the languages and everything. So we are covering it, and I'm trying to simplify it and keep it as simple and straightforward as possible. I also wanted to mention the shuhada of Kuwait much, in Balochistan. May Allah bless their souls. Inshallah, at the end, we'll recite a Fatiha for them as well. So he says that we're going to use a very logical and a very straightforward. So we've done some very simple proofs, and this is a bit more difficult. The reasoning that we'll be using today will be a bit more difficult. It is not very complicated, but it is a bit more difficult than the previous proofs that we've done in the last session. And this requires a bit of understanding of logic and philosophy and some reasoning. So I will need to explain all of these in more detail today. So just bear with me. Just remember one thing, that after going through this reasoning, we only prove God to be a necessary being and not God. So we, and because that necessary being then needs to go through other reasoning to prove that he possesses the qualities of God, and that necessary being is not matter or energy or something else. It is God. So we will only in this lesson, in lesson number 7, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, it is lesson number 7. We will only prove that in the previous session we proved the existence of God with simple proofs, and today we will prove that the God is the necessary being, or we will only prove that there is a necessary being. And then in next lesson we will try and prove the qualities and attributes of that necessary being to prove that that necessary being is God. So in today's first session, in lesson number 7, we'll only prove that that there is a necessary being, and we are saying that that is God. But we will not discuss the attributes. Now, the theologians and philosophers have gone into a lot of detail in proving the existence of God, and we are going to be using one straightforward method, which is known to be burhan, illatu ma'lul. In the previous ones we said burhan al-nazm, the reasoning of systematic creation. Everything is so systematic in this world, organized, that it leads us to God. Those are very simple. And other things, the burhan fitrat, the reasoning of nature. But today we're going into burhan wajib wa mumkin or illatu ma'lul. Wajib and mumkin is necessary and possible being, and illatu ma'lul is cause and effect. Okay, let me explain this burhan from outside first, and then I will have to probably draw some preliminaries and then prove the existence of God. Very straightforward. If you just follow the text of the proof. So the proof is existence, when it is assumed intellectually, can be either necessary or possible. Intellectually, no existent lies outside these two assumptions, and every existent cannot be assumed to be possible existent, because a possible existent always needs a cause, illa. If all causes were possible existence, each one of them in turn requiring a cause, no existent could ever come into being. In other words, an infinity rigorous tasalsul of causes is impossible, mahal. Therefore, an infinity backward series of causes must be compelled to terminate in an existent mawjood that is not an effect, ma'lul, of any other existent, i.e. the necessary existence. So I've now quickly read, and I'm going to explain this. When you read it, you will find it difficult to understand. So now please everyone pay attention. I'm going to explain the whole thing. The existence or being, wujud or mawjood, anything that exists outside. The existence is of two types. Either the existence is mumkin, in English we call it possible being, or it is wajib, which is necessary being. Everything that we see is either possible being or necessary being. And when we say that everything is either possible or necessary, so I'm either necessary being or possible being. And each one of you and this device that I'm using, the stand, the chair, the table, everything, the books, the text, everything we see is one or the other, possible being or necessary being. Everything, according to philosophy. Everything cannot be possible being, because if everything was possible being, then that would cause tasalsul, which is infinite rigorous. Tasalsul, for example, everything depends upon each other. Then that would mean that nothing exists. I'm going to explain this, just pay attention. So many things exist, so therefore this is wrong. So this is what we need to prove. I'm going to prove this whole one paragraph in today's lesson. So we are saying that if we prove that everything is a possible being, then we have proven the existence of a necessary being. And there are only three scenarios. Paying attention, everyone? Only three scenarios. Either everything is a necessary being, or everything is possible being, or some are necessary and some are possible. So logically, there is no fourth scenario. There's no fourth possibility. Either everything is necessary, or everything is possible, or some are possible and some are necessary. Okay, everyone with me so far? Let's explain, before I go on any further, he says, let's explain what do we mean when we say possible being and necessary. What do we mean by that? I would need to do some logic here. So I hope everyone has heard of subject and predicate. So in logic, you use this term when you have a proposition before you. A proposition is when you are discussing a concept and you give a ruling to the subject through the predicate. Pay attention. The sun shines. So the sun is a subject. Shines is predicate. So basically, the shining you're proving for the sun. This is in logic. This is a very simple. The first predicate in logic ever written was by Socrates, Socrates himself, and he said, Socrates is a man. So Socrates is subject, a man is predicate. In Arabic, subject is called mawdu, and predicate is called mahmul. I don't want to go too much into this, but just pay attention. So you have first premises, second premises, and then a result. This is in logic. So you say Socrates is a man. Every man is mortal. The second premises. Result. Therefore, Socrates is mortal. Everyone followed it? It's very simple. Now, what is mumkin, possible being and necessary being? According to logic, because to do theology, jurisprudence, philosophy, principles of jurisprudence, and for many, many other sciences, you do need logic. Not just common sense, I'm talking about studying logic as a subject. In Hausa, in the Shia Hausa, we have to study logic as a subject to be able to understand philosophy, theology, jurisprudence, principles of jurisprudence, and other sciences as well, but especially these four. These four subjects you cannot understand without having studied logic as a subject. Okay, everyone? Now, pay attention. When we say that 3 is greater than 4, then that's impossible. I'm going to use mathematical equations so it makes more sense and no one can deny it. Okay, 3 is greater than 4. That's impossible. And then I say 2 is half of 4. That's necessary in logic. Necessary. 2 is half of 4. Yes. There is nothing else. It is necessary. 2 is surely half of 4. That's called necessary. And then I say, the sun shines above my head. That's possible because the sun sets, and it's possible that it does not shine above my head. Okay. The first, that 3 is greater than 4. 3 is never greater than 4. 4, meaning it will never be other way around. It will always. And the sun shines above my head is possible. Did everyone get it? I hope so. Now, so impossible being, necessary being, and possible being. So there are 3 in logic. Impossible, yes, impossible being, possible being, and necessary being. Philosophy, however, does not discuss, philosophy discusses being or existence. Okay? It discusses existence or being. Impossible being does not exist. Therefore, in philosophy, you don't discuss impossible things. You only discuss possibles and necessary. So there are 3. But in philosophy, you only have necessary being and possible. Everyone with me so far? Yes? Okay. Now, in philosophy, they say, what is the proof on existence? They say, in logic, there is a whole debate. Things are either obvious, badihi. In Arabic, it's called badihi, obvious. So things are obvious, meaning obvious things are which are very straightforward that everyone understands. And everyone understands very quickly. Meaning 1 is half of 2. Everyone understands it. It is very straightforward. That's called badihi. In English, we call it obvious. And then there are things which are nadari, require thinking or complex. For example, angels, when I say, you would need to think about it. Something doesn't come to mind. You need to think. Yes. So there are complex. Now, existence, when you say wujud, philosophers argue that this is a very obvious notion, because everyone exists and everyone understands existence. When we say things are either possible beings in philosophy or necessary beings, what we mean is that possible beings are dependent in the simplest words, and necessary beings are independent. Did everyone get that? That's how I translate it. Azla Misbah Yazid, because he was a philosopher, he went into a bit more detail. Let me explain. Possible beings, to come into being, to exist, they require other beings. Necessary or possible? So they require other possible beings or necessary beings to remain into existence, to come into existence. Something which is independent, doesn't require anything to come into being, to remain, so it hasn't come into being through something. Okay? That's called necessary being. So necessary being is completely independent. When we say that there are possible beings, most of the things, if not everything that we see, in fact, everything that we see are possible beings. If they exist or they don't exist, makes no difference. Their existence does not take away the existence of other things. Even if they do, then because they are cause for those things. Like water. But water in itself is not the cause of everything, of creation. So it may be cause. Let me. Some people have argued that I'm trying to simplify it. So some things become the cause of other things. For example, the table. A carpenter has caused it. So the cause of the table is the carpenter. But also wood is the cause, nails, hammer, all of those are causes. So there are different types of causes. I will discuss that in a minute in philosophy. So wood, so the table is an effect, and all of those are causes. But the carpenter use the wood, nails, hammer, everything to give you the table. So the carpenter is the cause of making a table, but the carpenter himself is not the ultimate cause, because the carpenter himself or herself is an effect. And it was back. The cause itself has no cause. It started everything off. Okay? Everyone get that? So that is why we say that we need to understand everything is a necessary being. Is absurd, because everything we see around us is a possible being. So only two possibilities remain. Either everything is possible being, or there are some possible and some necessary. Let's prove that everything is possible being is wrong as well. Then we will have the final scenario. So we say that everything is a necessary being is absurd. Let's prove that everything is a possible being is also wrong. That is not very simple and straightforward. So let's please pay attention. If we say that everything is a possible being, then what you're saying is that everything is an effect and there is no cause. They have caused each other. That is absurd. Well, it is tasalsul, and tasalsul is batil. It's tasalsul is basically indefinite regress. Let me give you an example. Everyone pay attention. If there were 10 people standing at a racing line, everyone wanted to run a marathon, 10 people. And everyone said, I will not run until another person runs. No one will ever run, because they're all saying that someone else should run before me. So if everything was a possible being, then nothing would be there, because everyone would be waiting for a cause. Everything possible would require a cause. But there are so many things that exist. So therefore, everything is a possible being is not possible. I hope I explained it. I don't want to go more into it. So what we're saying is that everything is a possible being is not possible, because if everything is possible, then that causes indefinite regress, tasalsul. And tasalsul is batil according to philosophy and logic. And therefore, everything is a possible being is unacceptable, and which is impossible. Muhal. Yes? Because there are so many things that exist. Now, unfortunately, some people have confused this. So they say that, okay, so what you're saying is that everything that exists requires a cause. Therefore, God also requires a cause. What is the cause of God? No, we didn't say that. According to philosophy, what we've proven is that every possible being requires a cause. Not every being requires a cause. What we're saying is that the necessary being does not require a cause. Only the possible being requires a cause. Therefore, there must be a cause which is outside this circle. And that is what we will prove. That was what we have proven is a necessary being. We will prove later that that is God. But at the moment, just stick to the word that that necessary being is outside the possible being circle. And therefore, there is a being which is the cause of everything, and that is necessary. Now, please pay attention to cause and effect. As Al-Misbah has gone into explaining cause and effect as well. So in philosophy, they say that the cause and can be of two types. The cause is of two types. So there are two types of causes. The essential cause, and that's something which is established by itself, essential. Essentially, or bizat. In Arabic, we call it bizat or dhatan. Bil that, so bizat it becomes, okay? Or dhatan, something which is dhatan. For example, the sun shines. You know, there is light in the sun. The light in the sun is by itself. Yes? So the light in the sun is by itself. But the light on earth is bil ghair, through something else, through the sun. The food is salty because of the salt. But the salt is salty because of itself. The other example that Al-Misbah is used here is something which is greasy. So some things are greasy because there is oil on them. But the oil is greasy because of itself. Oil is always greasy. Did everyone get that? Okay. So illatu ma'lul. They say so some causes are essential causes and some are through something else. For example, pay attention. In principles of jurisprudence, they argue, for example, a person who is walking, you say that he is moving with that essentially by himself. So you say, oh, he's moving. Yes. But a person who is sitting in a car or in a bus and the bus is moving and you say, oh, that person is moving. They're not moving by themselves. They're moving because the bus is moving. So they're moving through something else. Did you all get that? I hope so. So we say that there are many things which have a cause, and their cause is either essential by themselves or by through something else. Everyone got that? Now, at the end, he comes before he proves the existence of God or necessary being. He says, the impossibility of an endless chain of causes. So if everything causes, you know, for example, they say there was, you know, everything started, and everything caused each other. So we were caused by our parents and they by themselves, and until there was a time when, for example, I don't know, Darwin's theory that no human beings existed. So we were apes, and before that we were in the ocean, you know, like, I don't know, turtles. Before that we were germs, you know, like we were cells and particles. So everything started by itself and reached where we are. No matter what theory you take, it is logically impossible that everything is a possible being. There has to be something which is outside that vicious circle that everything caused itself. What you're saying is that A caused B, B caused C, C caused D, D caused A. Well, then what caused A or B? What caused B, C? What caused C, D? What caused D? Are you saying A? When you're going in a vicious circle, that is impossible. Something has to be outside that circle to start everything off. And that is the necessary. Did everyone get that?
Exactly.
Oh, okay, so now when we come back, finally to prove the existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, well, not Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at the moment, because we've done previous proofs, but we are saying that there is a necessary being. In next lesson, we will prove that that necessary being is God. At the moment, what we're saying is that there are two types of beings, necessary being and possible being. If everything is a possible being, then nothing should exist because they're all dependent on each other. If everything is dependent on each other, then nothing exists. But everything, so many things exist. So therefore, what we're saying is that something is outside that circle, something is outside that box, which is necessary being that started everything off. And that's how we call that necessary being as the cause of all causes, or the ultimate cause, the cause of all causes. Illatul ilal. I may be a cause of many things, but I'm really an effect. So there may be many possible beings which are causes, but in fact they are themselves effects. The necessary being is never an effect. It is always a cause. And it is, so I may be, things may be caused by themselves or through other things. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or the necessary being, is a cause, ultimate cause, and a cause by itself, does not require anything, is not triggered by anything, does not. So therefore it is, we say, independent and not in need of anything. Just remember this, it is independent and not in need, but all the effects are in need. They're all dependent. So the necessary being is independent. It is needless. Just remember this. Okay, any questions? I've only finished lesson 7. I want you to do also lesson 8. I'm not sure if I will be able to finish lesson 8. I will start because these two lessons are the most complicated in the first part. The rest are very easy. So I will start lesson 8, and I think we'll take the questions at the end. Shall I start lesson 8?
Yes.
Okay. So in the previous lesson, lesson number 7, we proved that so all we proved was that there is a necessary being. We did not prove that it is one. We did not prove the attributes and the qualities. All we said that it is impossible that everything is necessary being, and it is impossible that everything is possible being. So there is at least one necessary being, and the rest are possible. Now let's study the qualities and the attributes of that necessary being, so that people do not confuse the necessary being with matter, with energy, with the creation of God, with an idol, with a prophet or something else. So it is important that we start studying the attributes of that necessary being. In the last lesson, we said that the necessary being is needless. It has no needs. Because if it had needs, then that would mean that that need is the cause of the necessary being. And if anything has a cause, then it is not the necessary being, it is a possible being. Did you all get that? So necessary being has no cause, has no needs. When we prove that the necessary being has no needs, has no cause, then we are proving two qualities. Then we are proving two attributes for this necessary being. So in this lesson, I will try and prove that that necessary being is God. So two qualities. The first two qualities of necessary being is that it is independent. Yes, it is independent. It is independent and it has no cause and it has no needs. It has no cause or no needs. Okay. So no cause or no needs, and it is independent. So it does not depend upon anything for its existence. I may need oxygen, water, so many things to exist. The necessary being has no needs. It is independent, yes, and it has no needs. Now, so these are the first two qualities of necessary being. Based on the proof we have already used, I'm not going to try and bring in proofs from outside because I can go on. And Ayatollah Misbah Yazdi could have written hundreds, thousands of pages based on philosophy. So I'm just trying to keep it as simple as possible. Based on that proof we have used from philosophy, we are saying that the first two qualities are that it is independent and it has, it has no cause. So it is the first cause. It is independent and needless. Okay. Once you prove that that necessary being is independent and needless, you prove two more qualities for that necessary being. And what are those two qualities? Those two qualities are azali and abadi. Azali is so azali is meaning without beginning, and abadi means without an end. You can put them together and call them sarmadi or eternal. So Allah has no beginning and has no end. You see, the translator hasn't put them, but Simperian. Simperian is azali, meaning he has no beginning, Simperian. And endless, abadi. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is sarmadi. Sarmadi means both azali and abadi together means sarmadi. Islam uses that word in Dua Kumail. Sarmadi with sin, sarmadi means eternal, has no beginning and has no end. So the necessary being has no beginning and has no end. If you say that no, he has a beginning, then that means he requires a cause. But hang on, we prove that he has no cause, otherwise it's not necessary. Did you all get that? So he has no cause, therefore he has no beginning. And he has no end, otherwise he is in need of something to remain into existence. But we said he has no needs. So when he has no needs, he's independent, then that means he has no beginning and no end. Just logical. I'm not giving any Quran, hadith, nothing. Just logical proves that he has no beginning and no end. Just being necessary being, because he has no cause, because he is independent, therefore he has no beginning and no end. Everyone got that? Clear? So he has no beginning and no end because otherwise he is in need, and we are saying that he's not. Once you prove these two qualities, there is a whole debate in our ilm kalam in sifat thubutiya and sifat salbiya of God. Sifat thubutiya are positive attributes of God, and sifat salbiya are the negative attributes of God. Sifat is with sad, swad, fe, alif, te. Sifat. attributes. Subutiya with tha, alif ba ta tha, subutiya, positive attributes, meaning the attributes that God must possess, must have. And sifat salbiya with seen, salbiya, God must not have. Now, we are not going to go into sifat subutiya and salbiya, but what we want to prove is that the necessary being is God. Therefore, we will quickly discuss some of the negative attributes that the necessary being must not have. Yes, the sifat salbiya means that attributes that the God does not have and the necessary being will not have. Okay. The first thing to remember is in sifat salbiya, so there are 8 positive attributes and 7 negative attributes. 7 negative attributes, God must not have any of these 7. Okay. One of them is tarkib, composition. In Arabic is called tarkib. God is not murakkab. Anything which is tarkib is murakkab. Murakkab means composed. God is not composition. He is mujarrad. Like ruh is mujarrad. He's not composed of anything. Mujarrad means simple. Simple, here it is from philosophy. So anything which is not composed is called simple or mujarrad, tajarrud. So God is not composed, because anything which is composed is in need of its parts or the parts of the composition. Bones, I don't know, anything which is composed is in need of the parts. And we said the necessary being has no needs, it is needless. Okay, so it cannot be composed. Being cannot be composed. Secondly, even if you say that it can be composed in the mind, so in reality it's not composed, but it is composed in the mind. For example, you have 2 straight lines. So God can be a line. Hang on, even a line cannot be God, because the line, let's say if it is 1 meter, 2 meter, then it can be divided. And even in the mind, you say that, okay, I've cut the line into 2 halves and it is no longer 1 meter. So that can be broken down. It is in need of its parts. So even a line is in need of parts. Therefore, even in the mind, you should not be able to do that. And therefore, God is not composed, and it is not even a line. Line, I mean, is khat. Yes, you draw a line and you say this line is God. No. Now he goes on into explaining bil quwwa and bil fi'l, actual and potential. Actuality, yes, and potentiality. Anyone who is studying medicine is potentially a doctor, and when they complete the education, they become actually a doctor. So this is in philosophy. This is also in logic, to be honest, in logic and philosophy both. Bil quwwa, it is used in all different sciences, to be honest. Bil quwwa and bil fi'l. Bil quwwa is potentially, and bil fi'l is actually. Did everyone get that? If I meat with all the herbs and everything, onions, I don't know, then I will have chicken karahi. I have meat and all of those ingredients in front of me, so I potentially have chicken karahi in front of me. But once I cook them together, I actually have chicken karahi. You cannot have parts of God, and God cannot be composed of anything potentially or actually. Therefore, the necessary being is not a composition. Potentially or actually, it can never be a composition, and therefore the necessary being is not composed. So it is needless, it is independent. These are the things that we have so far proven for God, or for the necessary being, to be honest. So these are, as necessary beings, things that we must negate from the necessary being. While we negate, being is not composed, and therefore is not a body, because body is composed, is not a jism. And when it is not a body or mass or volume or mass, yes, body is something which has mass, yes, it has length, width, and depth. A line does not have depth, so it is not a volume or mass, yes. So God is not composed, and therefore it is not a body, and therefore it cannot be the necessary being. Sorry, I keep saying God. So the necessary being is not composed, and it therefore is not a body, and therefore cannot be seen, because only body can be seen, and cannot be perceived through the five senses, through eyes, ears, taste, smell, or touch. Once you negate body from the necessary being, everyone with me so far? Shall I continue? Once you, yes, okay. Once you prove that God is not body or volume or mass or composition, then what you're saying is that the necessary being is outside the realm of time and space. Remember these two terms, time and space. In Arabic, time is called zaman, space is called makan. Zamano makan. Time and space are limitations. And the necessary being is unlimited, infinity. It is needless, it is independent. And when it is not composition, it is not body, volume, mass, shape, or line, then it cannot be perceived, and it is out of time and space. At the moment, I have not used any ayat, no Quran, no hadith, or everything is logical. So once you prove that God is out of time, necessary being is out of time and space, then it cannot be associated with change, because change occurs on things which are either composed or are in time and space. So the necessary being does not go through change, does not go through perfection or evolution. Sorry, not perfection, evolution. Perfection you can say as well, but evolution. So it does not go through change, does not go through evolution, does not cannot be associated with movement, because movement also comes into time and space. They move from one space to another, into one time into another. And therefore, it does not go through any change whatsoever, because it is out of time and space. That is the necessary being that we have discovered so far. And it also negates some of our Sunni brothers who in Sufis believe that God moves or is sitting on the arsh or throne or comes down onto the earth during Shab Juma. Also the Christians who believe that he can dissolve the Christ in Jesus is God, they say. Yes, the Christians believe that the Christ in Jesus is God. Jesus Christ, they call it. So they say that hal, yes, God can dissolve into things. He can take up, you can get sugar or salt and you mix it into water. Then you say, where is the sugar? We don't have it anymore because it dissolved. So God does not dissolve into things, or the necessary being cannot dissolve because it does not go through formation or change, because it is out of time and space. I think I will do the rest in next week because I need to explain things. Or if you want, then I can try and, I've only done half of lesson 8. I can try and complete it, but I would need more time. Otherwise, I can complete it next week. Otherwise, we won't have time to ask questions. If you want to ask questions, then I will just leave it here, and you can ask questions, or I can complete.
I think it's better if we have a question session for the lesson 7.
Is better that we finish lesson 7?
No, I think we should have Q&A for the lesson 7, inshallah.
7 and 8, because I haven't completed lesson 8, but I've done half of it. So you can ask questions. Okay, then I'll just end it here. You can ask questions, and I'll complete it next week. Sorry, I thought I will be able to finish, but these lessons require a lot of explanation, and I've tried to keep it as brief as possible and as simple as possible. I could have made it more complicated, and I could have gone into more depth, but it would confuse you, so I will allow you to ask questions.
Any questions? Okay, there's some in the chat, Maulana.
Can you read them out?
Yeah, so the question is, in short, when ayat Rafakhta Ruhi to Hazrat Adam, what was this ruh? Not part of Allah.
Okay. When we say Baytullah in Kitab al-Tawheed of Sheikh Saduq, when I've translated that into English, there are questions from the Imams on all of those things. So when the Imams were asked, Maulana, what does that mean? Ruh of Allah. Allah says Baytullah, Allah's house, doesn't mean Allah lives in it. It is associated to God. Prophet of Allah. The Prophet is from Allah, or associated to God. Nafakhtu fihi min ruhi. My soul does not mean that it came out of me. No. Soul that I created, that's what he's saying. The soul that I created, it is created by me. So it is my soul, not God's soul, but the soul from God, associated to God. So nafakhtu fihi min ruhi does not mean something came out of Allah and went into Hazrat Adam.
Is that also the same for the Masumin?
So Masumin alayhi salam are not part of God, or God is not in anything. They are the best of the best creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they are beyond our perception and reach, but they are creation of God, and God does not live in them. God does not exist in them. God exists independently, and he has created everything for their sake, but he has not created them as gods. He has created them as his best creation.
Okay, there's a request to repeat the 2 types of causes. One was essential cause, and the other one was...
Okay. Illat bizat and bilghair. One is essential, meaning by itself. Well, I'm saying essential, but the translator says by itself and by others. So some causes are by themselves. Like the sun has light by itself, but the earth has light by the sun, by something else. So you have cause which is by itself a cause, and causes which are by other things. So I may be cause of this lecture, but I am myself an effect. Allah is the cause, the ultimate cause, and He has no causes. And necessary being will not have any cause. All of the causes will have a cause.
Maulana Sahib, are these, obviously these are kind of philosophical and logical explanations. Are these all kind of extracted from the sayings of Masumin al-Islam, or is it, are these kind of beyond that and even before the time of Islam?
Even from before Islam, before, even Socrates, all the people who believed in God, but Aimma alayhimus salam gave more depth to it. They gave more logical proofs than anyone else. So Imam Ali alayhi salam and Imam Sadiq alayhi salam have given many, many logical proofs. So what we're saying is that these are all logic and philosophy, meaning we are not basing them on because the Quran says there is one God, or because the Quran says Allah cannot be seen, or because the Imams have said. We are saying that yes, God has said that, Quran has said it, Imams have said that, the Holy Prophet ﷺ before the Imams have said it, and the Imams have said all of this. What I'm saying, everything is from Quran and Hadith. But what we're saying is that we are not using Quran and Hadith as the reason. Reasoning is all logical.
Exactly.
So no Muslim can ever say that, oh, because you believe in the Holy Quran, that's why you believe in one God, or because you believe in Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, or because you believe in the 12 Imams sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and they have told you all of these things, that's why you believe in them. We are saying that, yes, true, but we can prove all of these things through logic and philosophy without taking ayat and riwayat, without taking verses from the Holy Quran and traditions from the Ahlul. We can still prove them through logic. Did you all get that now?
That was very useful, yeah. So essentially it's more for us to, obviously it's for ourselves, but also we can use it when we're discussing with non-Muslims, because obviously they don't revere the Quran and Hadith until they become Muslims. So
Yes.
when we're in discussions with them, it's probably better to use philosophy or logic.
Yes. So everything is Quran and Hadith based. So everything we are using is not from outside Quran and Hadith. What we're saying is that we're not using ayat and riwayat to say, oh, because you have ayat and riwayat, that's why you believe in God. No, we're saying that we can prove it through logic and philosophy. Very simple reasoning, we can prove the existence of God.
Jazakallah. Any other questions? There's a point in here. It said, you just said logical philosophy. Does this mean that there are other forms of philosophy?
Okay. Well, different philosophers have different attempts. What we're saying is that logic, I didn't say logical philosophy, I said logic and philosophy. So we are proving the existence of God through logic and philosophy. Sorry, I do speak a bit fast. I get complaints all the time. So not logical philosophy. Well, philosophy has two main types. I don't want to go into that, but very quick, because you've asked this question now. So there are two approaches to philosophy. The realism and idealism. So there is a real world and the ideal world. The ideal world may be the best, but it is not the real world. So there are two approaches to philosophy: the realism and idealism. And then there are many, many different philosophers and many, many different types of philosophies. But there is no logical philosophy. Philosophy can be, a philosopher can give any sort of idea, and there can be, big philosophers like Hegel, I don't know, the Germans and the French, the Renaissance produced the best philosophers few centuries back in France, Italy, Germany, Britain. France had the highest number of philosophers. And then before those, there were, Muslim philosophers. So if you go into early ages, before even Islam, they were the first philosophers are Greek philosophers. Even before Christ, Jesus, before even Jesus, there were philosophers in, these philosophers were in Yunnan, in Greece. So the Greek philosophers. And then came the Muslims, and they
Lana,
contributed heavily.
is there any caution in terms of studying philosophy that's not particularly Islamic, or from the sources of
Many
trusted sources?
have given fatwa against philosophy, and they have forbidden it, and they do not allow it, especially Western philosophy. The early philosophers, like Ibn Sina, Avicenna, some of the philosophical debates are so deep, you will be lost. Not only they're difficult to explain, they are difficult to understand. Even Ibn Sina says that my works are sahlul mumtani'. When you're reading them, you think that they're simple, mumtani', but it is impossible for you to understand. And he says that what I have found from the previous people is very little, like the Socrates, Plato, Aflatun, Arastu, Aristotle. And he says what I've contributed myself is a lot more, and I've given the blood from my liver to produce the works that I have produced. So he has been one of the greatest philosophers to have ever lived. Abu Ali Sina, 900 years back. Then came, other logicians and philosophers like Farabi. So philosophy is, quite confusing, and even very educated people cannot understand it. That's how deep and difficult it is. So I've only tried to use the simplest and straightforward, according to Pakistani time. I've used very simple and straightforward reasoning from logical philosophy to prove the existence of God. According to the Pakistan time, it is 6:30 British time, so 11:30. Okay. Thank you very much. وآخر دعوانا الحمد لله رب العالمين. Can we all recite a Surah Fatiha for the Shuhada of Much in Balochistan, who, the 11 Shuhada, probably 12, some are saying. So Al-Fatiha for them and for all the scholars and mu'mineen and the deceased members of the people attending their, so their deceased family members. Al-Fatiha. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for appreciating this. I hope everyone